start with this video for tonight's segment on Iran.
Will not end until all sides have paid a heavy cost. If they agree to what Trump seems to want, which is a quick ceasefire, their calculation is based on their experience from June, that all that will do is enable the United States and Israel to attack Iran again another 6 months from now.
Apparently, Trump has offered a ceasefire, and right now, that means a lot for me, because if there was a Venezuela type situation where there's going to be a quick regime change, Trump would not be offering a ceasefire. The fact he's offering a ceasefire is really, really bad for Trump, because it basically means he has no plan. He just was, I'll kill the supreme leader, yay, and then we'll have a ceasefire and I'll have victory. That's not going to happen. Now, I have a feeling he might have blundered very badly in Iran.
It will give the U.S. and Israel a time to remobilize, restock their...
And yes, I agree with what they're saying here. If Iran did agree to a ceasefire, 6 months from now, the U.S. would basically try, and Israel would basically try again. They'd bomb the new leaders of Iran and kill them and say, maybe if we keep bombing the leaders of Iran every 6 months, eventually we'll get the regime we want. I think that's basically Israel and U.S.'s approach at this point. And it's not good for you. That's not something Iran should be okay with.
Their missile interceptors, etc., but there will be another war. In order for the war to end in a durable manner, they believe that the cost must be much higher for all sides. Of course, this is a disastrous situation for the region as a whole, but this is also precisely why at least some of the actors, I would say the majority of the actors in the region, in the GCC, did everything
certainly not, yep,
they could to prevent this war from starting in the first place.
The main thing I want to focus on now is what seems that the last step on the escalation ladder, and that's the Strait of Hormuz, targeting the ships there, trying to close the Strait of Hormuz. But you said something earlier.
They've already did that. They destroyed one of their own tankers, own Shadow Fleet Iranian tankers, tried to go through the straits, and they bombed it. It might have been an accident, or it might have been intentional. But in any case, everyone else, they say Iran's even willing to bomb its own tankers. No tanker is willing to go through the strait right now. All the tankers are docked. The Strait of Hormuz is effectively closed. 25% of the world's oil is trapped, is off the market. That continues for a long period of time. Oh boy, we're going to see inflation everywhere.
I didn't understand what you meant by it. We thought that this was, stage 2, stage 3 of the escalation ladder, but this is the opening stage, or whatever you want to call it. What do you mean by this? Do you mean they skipped a few stages and immediately went to maximum damage?
Yeah, I think they're
just getting started and they've got more steps on that escalation ladder?
No, what I meant is that the perception that existed in many places was that they wouldn't go after, mindful of the very strong reaction of the GCC after the Iranians bombed Qatar last year, that the Iranians would be hesitant towards attacking some of those bases in the early stage of this war.
We killed the supreme leader. That was the biggest act of provocation possible. Everything's on the table in retaliation, basically.
It might come down the road as the escalation continued. It turns out that was not the calculation.
Now let's go into that. What I said was so important is the ceasefire.
Through Oman.
Through Oman. That is not exactly how that went down. The Iranians are saying, and the foreign minister will say, of course, that they're open to de-escalation. That's different from saying that they're ready for a ceasefire. I'm not saying that I think the Iranians will never be ready for it. I'm just saying that based on what I'm hearing, what I'm reading, what I'm seeing, what people I'm talking to and their conduct, particularly after the assassination of the supreme leader, the Iranians are not going to go for a ceasefire early. And again,
agreed.
The calculation that a quick end to this war only paves the way for another war 6 months from now is one that is very strongly held based on the pattern that they have now.
What else? Iran's goal of this is...
What do you think is Iran's end game here to try to end this?
They're going to force a surrender of the West.
Yeah,
the United States, despite our claims to the contrary.
Trump is vulnerable. He started a war when only 21% of the United States supported the war. So he started an unpopular war. And so if it drags on, it's going to hurt him politically so badly. And you've already had deaths, and there's probably more deaths that they're covering up that will slowly come out. He could end up a lame duck as a result of this. I think that's now the most likely scenario.
I don't believe it has the staying power to sustain a 2 to 3 month war of attrition.
It doesn't. Other commentators have gone through all of this. Ships need to go back and get new missiles. We just don't have enough supplies. We don't make them fast enough. We just can't sustain this for like 2-3 months period. In fact, an all-out attack 1 week is the max. After that, it becomes much more sporadic from the American side, the bombing.
We've already seen last March, Operation Rough Rider in the Red Sea, where you had 2 aircraft carriers. You had total U.S. air supremacy and total control over the air of Yemen. And with the stated objective of we were going to reestablish freedom of navigation and eliminate the Houthi missile threat. We tried for...
You guys remember that when Trump went to war against the Houthis and how he had to back down at the end of that? That is basically going to be the Iran conflict, except on a bigger scale, in that what Iran's going to do, like including the Strait of Hormuz, is a lot bigger than what the Houthis did. And they'll be doing a lot more damage around the region. And it's going to be far more humiliating for Trump he's going to have to beg them to stop. That is what I see as the end of him. And I know when I say beg him to stop, I mean private behind the scenes. He's never going to do that in public, but it's going to be seen as him. He's going to have to make concessions to get this ceasefire.
7 weeks and then gave up. One of the reasons we gave up.
Great distraction in the moment, though. Well, I don't think that's why the war was started. This war was months in preparations. You had Danielle Durand that was predicting this basically since the end of the 12-year war last year, has been saying he expected an attack on Iran. He expected even it earlier, like last December. It ended up being 2 months later than he expected. But point is, this war in Iran was scheduled a long time ago. So it's not like to distract from the Epstein files, whatever. If you're talking about distractions, like Trump's decision to release the UFO files, that's a distraction. This is something that was planned.
Is because it was becoming extremely costly. That operation, in terms, when you add up the loss, the 3 F-18s loss, and then the 7 Predator drones, the MQ-9 Reapers, that were lost in a 7-week period, and then add into that the previous 15 or 16 that had been lost. Right, those drones go for $35 million a piece.
$35 million.
So when you lose.
Another big thing that the Iran war is, it's going to remove a lot of the American threat. It's going to make America seem less intimidating. It's going to be a big stain on U.S. military power, and a completely avoidable one if he hadn't started this war, because we don't have boots on the ground, and without boots on the ground, I don't think we're toppling this Iranian regime. If we did have a plan to take out the regime, Trump wouldn't have offered a ceasefire.
When you lose, say, 25, all of a sudden, you're talking.
I think they managed to convince Trump, to do this, one, by telling him that there was like 70% support from the people to get rid of the supreme leader, like fake polls. They used that to convince one half of convincing Trump. The other one is they told him that the supreme leader was basically another version of Hitler, and he would be a hero for taking out the supreme leader. So I think those two lies together are what got Trump to invade, to launch this attack. As to regard to supreme leader, I think he's the one who was anti-nuclear bomb. He's the one he's the one who's been for negotiations. He's the peaceful dove in Iran. There are people supporting the Houthis, and then attack Israel. They are hardliners in Iran, but I think the hardliners are the ones that survived the strikes so far. We've only killed off the doves in Iran. And all that are left are the hardliners, which is not exactly a great situation.
Well over $700 million. And then you add in the F-18s, you're up to close to $1 billion. And we failed to achieve those objectives. So the United States right now is involved with something that's far more costly.
Yeah.
The ability of the naval force that's south of the Abraham Lincoln to project force is limited. And apparently there's reports out today that the Abraham Lincoln was attacked, that maybe one of its company ships to screen.
This here, if true, is huge. But the problem is, all these attacks on cities and whatever, there are hundreds of people with cell phone cameras, and we get footage of that, and we can somewhat confirm what's going on in terms of strikes at cities. U.S. carrier group, that's out in the middle of the sea. There are no witnesses to what happens. They could sink several ships, and you'd only find out when it leaks eventually. From the U.S. military, but they could keep it silent for a while. So, I am sure that Iran has tried attacking U.S. carrier because they've attacked everywhere else. So, of course, they've also attacked the carrier. And we have not heard back as to the results from those attacks. But considering everything they've done so far, I imagine that they have done some damage to U.S. carrier group. And one ship, one destroyer seems about right in terms of the amount of damage that Iran has caused.
It was sunk.
We'll have to see.
Or severely damaged, and it's retiring from the area.
So let's get that again.
Or severely damaged. It's the company that the Abraham Lincoln was attacked, that maybe one of its company ships to screen it was sunk or severely damaged, and it's retiring from the area. And this comes back to the naval base in Bahrain, because that's basically has been the headquarters for the Fifth Fleet of the.
Also, Iran bombed a building that was apparently CIA headquarters in the Gulf, and that entire building was up in flames. And I believe it, because something like that, a target like that, guarantee Iran knows it, because CIA headquarters, that's been around for years, decades. Every country in the region knows it's there. And so, yeah, I believe that building that we saw the other day going up in flames was the CIA headquarters.
The United States Navy. The destroyers...
Whether there was any personnel in it when it went up in flames, that's a different story.
They carry a package of missiles. They're like 50...
Yeah, they hinted at it years ago. Yep.
In the front, the bow of the ship, and 46 in the stern. These are cells that are built into the deck, and when they open up, a missile can be fired out of it. And they got, if they're in a defensive posture, they're carrying nothing but Aegis missiles to defend against incoming drones and missiles. If they're in an offensive capability, they'll carry, say, 50 their economy.
What do you think works best in terms of pressuring Trump to tackle, to find a way out of this? Is it, and this is, by the way, so that's report, secondary explosions likely from an Iranian one-way attack drone striking U.S. air defense system in Erbil, in Iraq, in the Kurdistan.
Yeah, just getting this because this is now, well, it's 4 hours ago, but this was live at the time I was watching. Iran isn't stopping. It keeps on firing, and if it keeps up this tempo for like an entire week, I think already at that point Trump is in serious trouble. 2 weeks, it just gets worse from there.
Region. There you go.
Yeah. Well, Trump has got a problem. He's not going to. He wants to prevail militarily.
Yeah, Trump will never put boots on the ground. First of all, and so there is no army that can go into Iran and do regime change. And if bombing supreme leader was enough to do regime change, all the rest of the bombing won't either. And we have that admission practically from Trump himself, but when he approached them for a ceasefire. So The US has no actual way of winning. Yet, every day that goes by with a straight close, with every damage that it does to Israel, to other Gulf, everything, all that is on him. It's entirely, he started this I'm saying stupid because that's what it appears now, stupid war, and everyone else is paying the price, and the pressure on him is just going to grow and grow. And it's going to start affecting US consumers. Like, gas prices are going to go up with the Strait of Hormuz closed. Already oil prices are spiking. And that means inflation. Big inflation in the United States. And now you're in a situation where we're in a major war, one thing he promised never to do, and you have inflation and all of this heading into the midterms. Oh my God, it's an absolute disaster for Trump. This is, oh my God. I think he might end up a lame duck, and it might cost Republicans Congress.
The United States will not prevail militarily in this, in part because they've created a lie and are believing their own lie.
Yes.
There is a group out of the Netherlands.
This right here is key. This is what I mean about the big problem that created this war.
Command.
This is actually something Asmongold believes too, that the Iranians overwhelmingly want the Supreme Leader gone, or wanted the Supreme Leader gone. That's a lie.
AMAAN, who is partnered up with a VPN outfit in Canada. And as I dug into it, I said, well, where are they getting their money from? Well, their money's coming from National Endowment for Democracy and
a CIA front.
USAID.
Another CIA front, basically.
Both have been used as, I'll call them open front companies for the CIA. And they specifically were tasked with creating polls to show that the Iranian regime was falling out of favor. And lo and behold,
yeah, I kind of doubt it. It's party. And there are Iranians who want Iran back, but they had to flee because of the Islamifications. Yes, one thing you have to understand, Iranians that fled, for one thing, have had 30 years or 40 years of Western propaganda, and their opinion about what's going on in Iran is completely different from people living in Iran. And maybe very young people, like people who weren't around when Saddam Hussein, on behalf of the United States, gassed hundreds of thousands of Iranians, they would put their life for that. They might be more optimistic about the U.S., especially if they've consumed a lot of Western propaganda. But I guarantee you, the majority of Iranians that are like 30, 40 years old and have had, I guess nearly all of them have someone they love die or do the gassing of Saddam Hussein, and they don't like the U.S. They don't like what Israel's been doing in Gaza, and they don't like how United States and Israel keep attacking them. They're not going to put up with U.S. puppet regime. I understand their plight, but the people still have a right to form their own nation. It's might makes right to a certain degree, which in the end the West has a lot of might. So I feel bad for them both. The West has a lot of might, but it doesn't have an army to invade. So in this case, it's not bombs alone can't change a nation. Not one where the government actually has popular support.
They did. They shut their polls resulted that 81% of Iranians couldn't wait to get rid of the Ayatollah.
This 81%, that is absolute nonsense. I'm sure there is dissatisfaction with the Supreme Leader, but there's no way Iran would have already fallen without any U.S. bombs if this was true. Let me put it that way. There would have been no need for the United States to do anything. It would. Any government that has 81% opposition has already failed.
But there was other polling that was done by the Maryland Institute of International Security, I believe is its correct title. They found the exact opposite. I mean, 180-degree opposite. And
yeah, people would have overthrown them if it was that open. Exactly. The other poll, the poll that wasn't paid for by the CIA, I think had like 70% support for the regime.
As we're seeing, if you're watching any of the videos coming out of Iran today, the streets throughout the country are filled with millions of mourners of the.
And I've heard a lot of people that said, yes, even the people that didn't like the Supreme Leader were like, yes, we don't like Supreme Leader, but we hate U.S. and Israel more. That's the problem. It's like Israel is at like 20% support in Iran. Less than 20% of people in Iran support Israel. So the idea of accepting Israel help to get a new government or having someone that, yeah, it's if you U.S. was not the person for regime change in Iran. Yeah, so you might be surprised how little percent is required for there to be big changes. To be fair, the revolution in war was only 10% investigator. Well, you know, you have to. There is some nuance in that. There's the silent majority. There is how many people on the other side. If there's only 1% on the other side, 10% is more than enough. It's how big. So it's also a game of numbers. How big are the people that are not involved, that have no stake one way or another? How big are the people on the other side? In Ukraine, again, it was like 10% also, but supported. 10% that's organized is like is 20, 30% in effect. And that's why color revolutions from CIA are so effective. Is they take a tiny sliver, 10% that is pro-Western, and they amplify its power, and then they use the power of the media and to vilify the government there, and they create a scenario for an uprising. Yep. I doubt they are scared into compliance after the fall of the head of state. Well, from what I was seeing, I don't think there was really. There are the terrorist groups, or there are the groups that have outside support, like that are operating in Iran, that are opposition. The protests we saw, that was because of the out of control inflation that was caused by the United States, as admitted by the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury. We collapsed our currency, it made prices soar, and that created legitimate outrage. But you have to understand, protest doesn't equal we want the government gone. I mean, there are protests in the United States all the time, but we don't want China to come in and put in a puppet China regime in the United States. We'd all be against that. Even the people protesting against Trump or whatever, they don't want China to put in puppet. Yeah, they just want to change a policy. That's what protests mean. It doesn't mean we want to completely wreck your own form of government every time you protest. Unfortunately, people don't realize how easily propagandized they are. The language is different to theirs. Yes, it's easy to completely mischaracterize the situation. The biggest advantage of the West, of the U.S., the deep state and everything, is the propaganda. It's always been their biggest power, the media. I just talked to someone today who was acting like the supreme leader was like a villain on the order of Hitler. This is Iran, who has never attacked another nation, is being compared to a threat on level of Hitler. The supreme leader who issued a fatwa against nuclear weapons and is the one who has prevented Iran from having nuclear weapons is supposedly this monster. Yeah, the effect of Western propaganda is amazing. And even there's still so much trust from even people that are supposedly skeptical. I'll give the example of Asmongold. Asmongold says you don't hate the media enough all the time, but he just swallows everything they spew on Iran without a shred of hesitation, without any doubt. But the good thing is Asmongold is going to have a wake-up moment on Iran. It's going to be a big domino that's going to destroy his faith in the media. Is the outcome of this Iran war. It's going to he's going to find out about the limits of U.S. power, of military power, that the media has been covering up, like the shortage of air defense missiles, the inability to conduct long operations, the inability to topple the Iranian regime. It's all three of those things are going to be bitter pills for him to swallow, and it's going to change his outlook. So there's that.
Ayatollah Khamenei. Now, are there people in Iran that oppose the Islamic?
Yeah, sure.
Oh,
There are.
absolutely. They exist, but they're a minority.
Exactly, a minority.
Sorry to interrupt you. There's a speech
No.
giving. There's Trump giving a speech, and I thought I'd tell you the highlights of the speech. He did an address to the nation. There will likely be more U.S. casualties. The U.S. will
Yes, I also remember this. Sorry for ragging on Asmongold, but yesterday he was taking no U.S. casualties. He was like, "Oh, that's incredible." Of course there were U.S. casualties. Of course, these casualties that have come out happened in the opening hours. There's probably been more since then. It takes a delay before the U.S. military is willing to admit them or can no longer cover them up. You probably have dozens now. Oh. That's going to be another wake-up call.
avenge the deaths of America.
Yep, he wasn't really thinking critically and checking all the sources, unfortunately. No, he just, like, that's what I said, accepts all the propaganda at face value. Like, everything about the protesters. Like, he thinks that, all the stories about protesters getting out, the 30,000 dead, which is just Western propaganda. I hear the actual number is 3,000 dead in the protest. That's 10 times the amount, as an example. And he doesn't realize that those protests were caused by U.S. shorting the currency and causing currency collapse. He isn't aware of that angle also. So many things he doesn't know.
Americans. This is him admitting there will be American casualties. Combat operations in Iran will continue. And then he says, I urge IRGC Iranian military to lay down your arms or face certain death.
Certain death with what army, Trump? You have no army to invade. How are you going to do this certain death? You can bomb them, you kill a bunch of them, but that's not certain death. There's huge limits on what you can achieve just with bombs.
Again, these are statements that will be expected. There's more statements coming in right now. The entire Iranian military command is gone, and the rest wants to surrender.
If that was true, why are the missiles continuing to rain? Why are you offering a ceasefire? If the Iranian government was on the verge of collapse, why are you offering a ceasefire, Trump? Why? That was the biggest admission that you had no idea what you were doing when you offered that ceasefire. Any benefit of the doubt that I had for you, Trump, that there was Venezuela type situation, that you knew how this was going to end. No. The fact that I knew from everything that was Iran, from the situation, from the Iranians' perspective, everything. If you attack them, they are not accepting a ceasefire this time. And I knew that. Why didn't you, Trump?
On the IRGC and the armed forces to lay down their weapons or face death. To the Iranian people, I delivered on my promise, but the rest is up to you.
And you see, this line right here is the other part of why I've completely convinced that Trump got bamboozled by the deep state is, yeah, he believed the 80% polls against the regime. Well, if there really truly was 80% against the regime, they wouldn't have needed your help, Trump. They would have just overthrown the supreme leader themselves. You believed fake polls about Iran, and now you're going to pay the price, unfortunately. And a lot of other people are too, with you.
You take back your country.
Yeah.
So is that just the next step in a regime change, or is that him slowly stepping away and saying, I've done my work? It's a very interesting statement. I delivered on my promise, but the rest is up to you. Does that mean this is it?
Yeah, no, you're thinking exactly as I am. That's an early sign of how he's going to get out of this. They'll ultimately come back and
I've heard that. So they're going to try to use those polls that, we took out supreme leader. Why didn't they rise up against him? Well, because they never were. The supreme leader was popular in Iran. Like, there were more people who liked him than disliked him. And when you killed him, it made the entire country solidify around the regime. You turned him into a martyr. You made the Iranian regime stronger than it was before. And now they're going to rain missiles down around the region without pause, and you have no way to stop this. It's the nightmare scenario for Trump.
Number two, he is, I think he was convinced that the United States had a chance of really, that the regime change was in the works. And again, this is why this is so ironic. The United States created the propaganda that the vast majority of Iranians wanted to get
And it
rid
was propaganda.
of the Ayatollah. And then the United States turns around and, the Trump administration embraces that information, which we produced as propaganda, embraces it as true. This is a little...
But this is, this is actually interesting for me because I've been seeing that Trump going along with the deep state and doing what this deep state wants in a lot of situations, like Venezuela, and I forget some other examples, but like Ukraine, like he hasn't pressured Ukraine at all to stop. He's still supplying intelligence. He might be sending Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. So he's doing everything that practically the deep state wants in Ukraine, except for his push for diplomacy, but that's not going anywhere. So I've been wondering why, how is everything, how is he being controlled? Does he, to me, there was two possibilities. One, he was doing a deal, like a give and take from deep state forces, like, don't push back against my immigration stuff, and maybe I'll go along with you on certain things like Ukraine. That was one path that I think that he might have been pursuing behind the scenes. And like that might have been why he was against releasing the Epstein files. He made a deal with, like, you saw how much trouble the deep state made for him during his first term, that maybe he was dealing with some of the actors on their parts, and in order to get his agenda through, like a politician. But now, like, if he says stuff like this right here,
and the Trump administration embraces that information, which
Trump buying the idea that the majority of Iranian people actually want regime change, I think that it's the second option to why he's doing what the deep state wants, which is he is surrounded by people that are feeding him bad info. He's on bad info on Ukraine, bad info on Iran, and that is how they're manipulating him. That he's not striking deals with the deep state, he's just being controlled with bad intel. That is what I think. That is now the more likely scenario, as far as I'm concerned, by what happened in Iran.
We produced as propaganda,
and the problem is this is going to cost him his presidency, this Iran stuff, because it's everything. He campaigned on no foreign wars, and then he does this, which is it's just starting now. But unless it's still a small possibility, tiny possibility. I won't completely rule it out. There's a Venezuela type situation where the country suddenly turns into pro-U.S. country somehow. I don't see how it happens in this case. Then, barring that, this is just going to be an unprecedented disaster to the level that it's going to destroy Republicans in the midterms. It's going to turn him into a lame duck barely a year into his presidency. That's how he got played by the deep state. And he should have, the fact that he let himself be manipulated this far. One good thing, perhaps, that might come from this is that it's going to be so bad for Trump that he might break with Israel because of this. He might break with Netanyahu. Because he might feel that Netanyahu betrayed him by leading him into this absolute disaster. So that might be the one silver lining. But this is going to cost Trump so much credibility. It's going to be a train wreck.
Embraces it as true. This is a little,
reverse. Yeah, that is true. It's with Trump. I'm sure it is. If you appeal to his ego, you could get him to do things. Like, I'm sure that was part of it. You can be the president that finally gets rid of the supreme leader of Iran. You'll be a hero. I'm sure that was an element of convincing him to do this. And, Venezuela, that's the ease that they got Maduro in Venezuela. That's, I think, a disaster because it made Trump think that he could be a hero this way in this situation too. Just if you watch Nux Taku at all, he's like, wow, Trump got this guy. Now he's got a supreme leader. He's knocking off all these. He's 100% on board with what Trump's doing. He doesn't understand yet the disaster Trump and the U.S. is heading into, that Israel is heading into, because Israel's going to have these missiles raining down on it. I mean, if this guy here, he'll talk about it later, he thinks that Iran isn't like 3,000 missiles. He thinks 20,000 missiles in these underground tunnels. That's how much Iran is. I don't know if I believe that, but it's a possibility. I could see that. I could see that maybe they have a lot more missiles than the West expects, and if they rain missiles down on Israel, Israel only has enough interceptors for like 1 or 2 weeks, and then every missile gets through. Can you imagine, like, dozens of missiles again raining down in Israel, each one of them hitting their target? It's a nightmare scenario. I don't think Nux would be all in favor of that if he knew that was the outcome of an Iran war.
We've seen this phenomenon before during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Back.
This is an interesting story, he says here.
When I was like 7 years old, you weren't even around. John F. Kennedy, when they first found out that these missiles are being built in Cuba, he's sitting there with his national security advisor, McGeorge Bundy, the Secretary of Defense, McNamara, and he's going, gee, I don't understand why Khrushchev would do this. He's acting as if we've put missiles into near to his country. And there was an awkward silence around the room, and finally McGeorge Bundy spoke up and goes, Mr. President, we have deployed those nuclear missiles. And Kennedy was like, what?
Yeah, we deployed nuclear missiles right on Russia's border, and so Russia sent missiles to Cuba. And the president didn't know we deployed these weapons. So.
I think you've had a similar phenomena with Trump here, where he was told a certain story, a certain narrative.
Yes.
About how weak.
He got a lot of people around him feeding him a lot of bad info.
The Iranians were, that all we got to do is.
And the Venezuela, I must admit, it was a masterstroke on the deep state's part. By their success in getting Maduro so easily, it gave deep state operators around Trump a lot of credibility, and they used that credibility to lead him into this Iran disaster.
Really punch him in the nose once.
Who by Netanyahu and Israeli intelligence?
Yep.
Or by his own administration, or both?
Both. I mean, it's really Netanyahu at foundation, because the CIA doesn't have independent assets in Iran. They rely upon Israel to give them, in my, recalling what I've been told by friends who've been involved with that effort. So he'd been suckered into it.
Israel basically is the extension of the deep state in the Middle East. That's its role. It's in charge of maintaining the petrodollar, of making sure everyone sells oil in dollars, and keeping the entire region pro-U.S. And so, on top of that, there is, yes, a section of Israel that's interested in the idea of Greater Israel. That is an angle on it, on top of everything. So it's those two factors. One, they serve a purpose from the deep state's perspective of keeping the world dollarized and the petrodollar strong. And again, Mossad has huge leverage on the United States because they have a huge amount of dirt on the United States. Like Epstein was, all the info they got from Epstein, for example. Yep, and it was founded by the same people who are associated with the IMF and the ESF. Exactly, and the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve, I wouldn't focus on that. The Exchange Stabilization Fund, okay, let me put it this way. The Federal Reserve is the front. When the mafia has a company that they have front companies they have one company that's completely honest, above the book. That's the Federal Reserve. All the nasty stuff that happens at the Exchange Stabilization Fund. There's no reason to do it at the Federal Reserve. I mean, when you have this other agency that's perfectly placed to do the nasty stuff. I mentioned it for anyone here who doesn't know about the ESF. And it's yes, the ESF is the Treasury slush fund that's in charge of defending the dollar and that runs CIA's black budget. And it's the one that's made make sure the petrodollar is strong, that keeps the world dollarized. It is the heart of the deep state that no one knows about. Well, I'm sure that its role will become more known as time progresses.
Believes it. And now they're starting to see it's not quite as easy, that every single one of these military facilities, they're having to close down. in Al Udeid, for example, you had what was called the KAOC, the Combined Air Operations Center. And in this Air Operations Center, you had, I would guess, at least 20 different countries represented. So it was a big operations center, computers, television screens. If you look up KAOC on the internet, you'll see a picture of.
The U.S.-Iran war has entered day number 2. There were so many things that happened on the first day. So much casualties happened, a lot of chaos and confusion. And, of course, the biggest thing that happened really in the day was not just that missiles were flying back and forth. But, by the way, I have to categorize all of this and say, listen, every image that comes out right now has to be taken with a grain of salt. And I mean every image. This is in the morning.
This is what I wanted to show. These are all people supporting the Iran regime.
Or lots of protesters, and these are people.
If there's this many people supporting the Iran regime, I don't think there's enough people to outnumber them.
People that are protesting for, or rather in support of the government. You see hundreds of thousands of them. I'm not a good crowd estimator, but you can see those are massive numbers inside of the square there in central Tehran.
Yeah, just look at that.
And these people are in solidarity.
And it's because the internet's cut off. We don't have more images of this, but the polls, I saw it tell you, the honest polls, the polls not produced by basically a CIA company, are 70% support of the regime. And this is...
Solidarity. You can see the Iranian flags that are there. Those are in solidarity to the government. So that wasn't the only one. There was some others. It's
I don't. That's why at this point I don't even really believe Venezuela is an option anymore, because you now have such high. You've martyred the supreme leader, so that means you consolidated the support for the regime. You probably have now like 75-80% support for the regime now in Iran, is my guess. There's no coup possible under that type of scenario. When you have 80% of the country behind something. Then you have the bombing of the school children, and whatever the story is behind that, I don't know. But the fact remains, there were at least 24 dead schoolgirls. And that definitely happened because U.S. chose to start this war. In Iran, who wants to be the one that sides with the child killers? The one who kills the supreme leader? No one.
Show you this one here. Let's see. I think it was this one. Yes, this is the one. It's kind of a different angle. One of the things we're trying to get done. And you see there some of the reports are that they're shouting death to American senators. So this looks as a defiance. Remember, one of the things I told you
if U.S. kills supreme leader, they have a right to chant death to America.
Time when this first happened was what was going to be unclear was, would this cause the Iranian side to crumble? Would it cause them to lose faith, lose hope, or would it galvanize them? That was the question. I didn't have an answer for it yesterday. This is only day 2, so you can't draw too many conclusions from that either. But the initial reaction here, now that the sun's coming up and people have an idea of what's going on, doesn't seem to be a lot of cowering and fear. That's one of the things that Alistair Crook said on our show last week, is that when you understand anything...
I don't think you'll be able to put a U.S. puppet state in Iran with a situation like this.
About the Shia Islam and the Iranian people in particular, that they have a culture almost of sacrifice. So the idea that they were going to collapse and bend over and roll over is never going to be very likely. I certainly didn't think. It's also important to point out that there were lots of people. There was a great piece on Cyrus Jensen yesterday where he interviewed somebody. I don't have time to get that video clip, or I would get it for you. We'll try to get it later in the week because it's really important. Because he was interviewing somebody from Iran that absolutely detested the Ayatollah regime.
This is pretty important too. Hear what he just said there?
Somebody from Iran that absolutely detested the Ayatollah regime. And I think he really characterized one of the big problems that we're going to have. Certainly the United States and Israel, who has jointly launched this war, in trying to create the downfall of the Iranian regime and to deteriorate support for it, because that's the vital thing. It's not just taking out targets. You have to destroy the desire of the people to support it. The hope is from the Israeli and American side is that we'll crush the support in there so that the people will fall away from the Ayatollah or the successor regime, whoever that's going to be. Well, this interview from Cyrus Jensen said, listen, here's the thing you need to understand. This is puts us, this Iranian guy, he said, this puts us into a terrible situation. Yes, many like me, he said, hate the Ayatollah regime. We've been protesting it for a long time. We don't like at all what he's doing. We don't like their repressiveness. I mean, all the things that we
kids dying puts us in bad guy role. And also just bombing the supreme leader, just turning him into a martyr. Yes, it's like, let's say this politician in the United States you don't like. I don't know, whether left or right. Yes, you don't like them. That doesn't mean you want China to come in and bomb them and mess with our internal politics. Especially if it's a scenario, or I should say North Korea, someone we actually hate in the United States. This scenario, like, let it continue.
In the West a lot, he said that is genuinely felt by a large number of Iranians. But, and this is the thing I was concerned about. Again, this is an anecdote. This is one person. But based on that image I just showed you about all these people inside of Tehran today, it seems like it's held by a lot of people. He said, you're putting us in a bad position. You're putting us in a position of not only turning against the Ayatollah, but then turning towards and indeed supporting the hated Israeli and American side.
Exactly. The supporting the side that has been doing Gaza destruction. Supporting the Americans that helped Saddam Hussein gas hundreds of thousands of Iranians. Jewish people don't really like Nazi Germany. They gassed a lot of Jews. Why would the Iranians like the United States that gassed a lot of Iranians?
When they shout this whole death to America and death to Israel and all that they've been doing for decades, a lot of it is because of the policies that we've had toward them, and it has created this generational animosity towards us. So we said, do you think that we're going to turn towards the idea that you have? And if you come in from the outside and assassinate our leader, and then you're asking us to support that, he goes, that's just putting us in a terrible position.
Yeah, they won't.
In an isolated world, they would like to have the Ayatollah.
If the Ayatollah had died from natural causes or something like that, maybe there could have been something. But again, I think the support was still too high for the regime to actually have fallen, even if he died of natural causes. But to kill him and then expect regime change, no. Like if you're one of these guys that he's talking about that hates the Ayatollah, to take advantage of the U.S. coming in and bombing in Iran, which school children could die, all these innocent Iranians die, and try to take advantage of that and to side with it. Yeah, you don't want to. They won't.
Totally gone. That's the part that we just aren't willing to let play out, I guess. We want to force it from the outside. We see genuine dissatisfaction among many and large numbers of the Iranian.
And it's a country of 90 millions? Of course you're going to have a large percentage. Like I wouldn't be surprised if it's 15, 20% that doesn't like the regime. I mean, a lot of it's like that in every country. There's a part that doesn't like the regime. But it's still, the majority still support the regime. And as long as that's true, coming in and bombing from the outside, it's not going to do anything. Okay, let's move on to this one. This, I think,
on about the 24-hour mark of this.
Full immunity or face certain death. It will be certain death. Won't be pretty.
Yeah, that's Trump. You don't have an army to enforce this.
Really warned of a lot of risk for the United States. This has got to be what he was talking about. So what are you going to do now? Because there's no reason for them to quit right now. They have the ability to continue to cause pain and difficulties for us to get through.
Trump is a hammer and not every object is a nail. Yes, but I think that the bigger problem is that Trump was given bad intel. He was promised that killing the supreme leader would lead to regime change. And people lied to him. He surrounded himself with deep state puppets and became a puppet himself.
And I mentioned a minute ago that Trump is talking about in his claims that why it's cool for us to keep losing troops, and we're probably going to lose more. But he said, we have this dastardly, murderous regime that's going to get this intent on getting nuclear weapons, and we had to act. We had to act. Well, on CBS News,
the stuff with Kirk is suspicious to me, to be honest. With Kirk, what's Kirk? Sorry.
Today, Senator Ted Cruz was asked about that.
I keep seeing how venomous people are being towards Owens. I don't know much about it. Charlie Kirk. Oh, the stuff with Kirk. Yeah. I don't know what's going on with Kirk. I do believe that the guy they caught is the one who pulled the trigger. That I do believe. But he was in forums on Discord, and I believe it's possible that someone, like, for example, Mossad just identified this as an opportunity to kill Charlie Kirk and disseminated on lots of places where there were unhinged individuals. Okay, here is where you can go. Here's where you would have a good shot at him, and hope someone would take them up on the information and enable the attack. That I think is possible. I don't think that he was actually a Mossad agent. I just think he was. They might. If there was involvement of Mossad, it was on that level of providing intel. That's my personal opinion. I think he would, but I think he was, just because you can't, just in terms of risk, having him actually be a Mossad agent would risk him spilling the beans when he's caught. And he has no reason not to. He's alive and well in police custody. So they can't gamble on that. You can't have him actually be an asset in any type of way of a foreign government. There's too much risk of that coming out. What they can do is, if they anonymously on Discord provided him with intel that helped him, well, even if you reveal that, it doesn't. It's not that bad. So that's my scenario. And it's possible that he was just acting on his own. But the only part I think is difficult is, I don't think he could have found that opportunity to kill Charlie Kirk just on his own, just researching on his own. Someone, maybe it was another unhinged leftist, not a government, helped him identify that opportunity. But he had help in any case in that way. Oh, enough of that tangent. Let's continue.
And I don't know if it was inadvertent or if he didn't realize what he was saying, but he admits he didn't have any evidence that there was a nuclear program.
Right now, Iran is building roughly 100 missiles a month. They're actively building missiles to threaten their neighbors. And
they're firing some of them right now at their neighbors.
Yeah,
at our allies.
They're illustrating power.
I do think it's crazy that people are found and just manipulated. It's far too easy. Well, it's, in terms of, it's a lot easier to do something. If I was an intelligence agency, that's how I would operate. That's how I would leverage the media. You have the media making a lot of people deranged on Trump and on conservatives and making them violent. And so you have the media that creates this environment, and these people then congregate on Discord servers, and then all you have to do is maybe spread targets on those Discord servers. Do you see what I mean? Then there's no way to trace it back to you, and that's how you leverage your control over the media to go after people you don't like. You propagize people into the point that some of them become violent, then you quietly communicate with those violent people and direct them in the right direction. I'm sure that has gone on to some extent.
Powerfully, they're attacking virtually every Arab neighbor that surrounds them. They are firing missiles that it's almost like they want to illustrate to the world just how malign they are.
But in terms of containing the risk, who's securing the nuclear?
Where do we go now? Because President Trump has put himself in a really difficult position.
Yes, that's what I mean. He blundered. Because now regime change was his goal, and that's not on the table anymore. So he's already practically failed. And now all there is pain left. All there is Strait of Hormuz closing, more missiles raining down on Israel, more on U.S. forces causing casualties, on U.S. allies in the region. It's all bad from here. There's no good politically for Trump from this point. Killing the supreme leader was the high point. Now it's all downhill.
And we also warned about this. This is not hard, folks. It was not hard to see this coming.
Yep, yeah. I said it. This is what I expected happening. The one tangent that possibility I allowed for is Venezuela type situation, but that's now appears to be off the table. So it's now all it's just a disaster for Trump.
Because now then you literally roll the dice and gambled everything on, I hope that the regime falls quickly.
And
Basically, what we tried to do was to have this operation on the cheap of saying, I want a whole bunch of air power because that looks cool and it's easy to do. And it's basically politically cost-free because everybody thinks it's cool to see all these airplanes flying around and shipped.
Yeah, just look at Asmongold. We're going to have a quick look at Asmongold's video from yesterday. Yeah, he's totally bought in by that. Cool, this idea of U.S. power and how we're awesome, no U.S. casualties. We'll go in to that video. It's insane and funny how wrong he is.
Ships in the sea flying and sailing the oceans. That's all cool. Looks like a lot of power. Got a video, but whatever. Once you're done, they're safe anyway, and then they can just beat feet and get back to the home bases, and it'll be fine. So we'll just drop some bombs. Everything will be good.
That's what Trump wanted.
That's not how it's working out. And I said all the evidence was
that Trump Iran went along with Trump's game last year when the 12-day war, letting U.S. bomb them and then call an end and giving Trump his victory. Yeah, and then Trump goes like. Less than a year later, it comes back to bomb them again. They're not like, no, we're not going along with that this time because if we do, you know what's going to happen? 6 months from now, you're going to bomb us again. And that's true, that Trump would do that. He was like, okay, we took out the Supreme Leader, that didn't work. Let's bomb them again and see if it works this time.
That it wouldn't work out that way. The idea that the Iranian people, and we had a lot of experts on our show last week that talked about the nature and the character of the Persians and the nature and character of the regime itself and of Shia Islam, that it's built on suffering. That's kind of what it is in its history. It goes back the long way, that they are long suffering and that they have sacrificed a lot and are willing to do so again. And even though there are
one last thing I wanted to look at in this video. Oh, here we go.
A lot of people, these are missiles that went into Israel that have pierced the Iron Dome, as Gary's putting on that crawler on the bottom right there. Does that look like somebody to you that wants to give up? Or does it look like, and note also, and we're going to hopefully have Ted Postal on this week. I don't know if we've gotten him on. I'm hoping so. But look at that shot right there. How many interceptor missiles are coming off from the ground? There's one. Look at all the rest of them. They just keep on rolling down. Hardly any that are even coming up. And then I think in this batch here, I think there's one. Nope, not even there. So none of that. So where is this?
Imagine this going on day after day for weeks. It's a nightmare for Trump
defense system
and Netanyahu.
Well, the Iranians know that. They knew it from last year. So now then they're demonstrating again, and they have a lot of missiles. And I've been telling you that. Gary keeps showing you that video of the underground cities where you...
Yes, that's what I want to show you, the videos of the underground cities. He's going to play that in a second.
Row after row after row of these missiles and their mobile launchers underground, protected underground. And now here we're seeing the fruit of it. They keep coming out. And for you now, after we've lost troops, we've seen that Bahrain has been attacked. We've seen that the Qatar has been attacked. Dubai has been attacked. Several other places. I think Kuwait. I don't remember if Saudi's been attacked.
Right
I know our base in Kuwait, for example, a lot of attacks that have gone on the ground, and obviously a whole bunch in Israel. Yeah, there's that one right there. You think that these guys are going to
look at the tunnel? Look at these tunnels.
When you don't have
these, I think these videos are so old, like before AI, so they're real.
Of an army. You have no army to threaten.
Hey, Voyager. We're about wrapping up a little bit of coverage on the Iran situation, and it's not looking good for Trump. These right here are video of Iran's underground tunnels filled with missiles.
And so to make that bodacious and braggadocious claim,
you can't, underground tunnels like this, you can't bomb them. They're probably dozens of meters underground. And even if you bomb them, it maybe only destroys one section.
You're going to face certain death. I know that briefs well in a video game or something like that. Or if you're just talking theoretical, or you're talking to your supporters in the White House, they're going to be going, whoa, you're such a tough guy. It doesn't work out here in the real world. They're proving it. As we speak, as you're making those absurd statements, they're firing more missiles. They're killing more Americans. They're killing more Israelis. I kept telling people over and over, if you care about Israeli people, if you care about the future of Israel, if you care about American troops, don't start a war of choice that you have very little chance you can win. It looks to me like they just said, hey, maybe if we hit them hard enough.
To wrap this up with a quick look at Asmongold's video on Iran from yesterday, because it just he's so
years
he's so out of touch on this situation.
ago. I'm assuming that. So, Minister of Defense, dead. Head of the Supreme Military, dead.
By the way, all these people are dead because in one strike they attacked one meeting of leadership. It's not like they targeted each one of these leaders in a different place or whatever. They just got them all in one meeting. So it's less impressive when you figure out that way. Also, the one place was the Supreme Leader's basically house. They were meeting there and they bombed that. But the problem is the guy who was essentially running the country and the defense of the country, he survived and he's still around, as obvious by the missiles raining down on everywhere. Yeah, it was just a boom by. And how much collateral? No one covered that. Yep, exactly. It's
Advisor to the Supreme Leader, dead. Commander of the...
But Asmongold here is a good representative of the average conservative or average American who's just looking at this from the outside, and so far they're really happy. Like he was big happy about the Maduro situation, like Nuxaku, and he's big happy with this so far. That's what I mean. It's all downhill for Trump from here. There's going to be no wins like this again for Trump. It's all bad from here on out, and he's going to have a wake-up call on Iran and the state of the U.S. military. Unfortunately, we've depleted our resources with the Ukraine war so badly in terms of air defenses, and then you start a war with Iran that has thousands and thousands of missiles.
Revolutionary Guard, dead.
Oh, God.
And chairman of SPND, dead. Former chairman, dead. The head of the Intel, dead.
Maybe Russia or China will join. I don't think they will need to, honestly, because you saw those tunnels full of missiles. As long as Iran keeps raining those missiles down, they're winning. Every day and the U.S. has no boots on the ground to challenge and change the regime, so they just, yeah. And if the one wild card, which I don't think will happen, is Israel drops a nuke on Iran. But we haven't gone to that point yet. Maybe after several weeks of missiles raining down on Israel, they might consider it. Well, it'll get dangerous in maybe 2-3 weeks. But right now, there's no chance of that. And again, that would be on Trump. If he starts a war that ends with Israel dropping a nuke, I mean, and that would turn everyone against Israel. Oh, I'm not even going to go into that possibility. It feels bad for the UAE. Yeah, I feel bad, but I feel bad for everyone. This was not something that needed to happen. They could have just done a deal. Iran was giving on the nuclear stuff at the very end, and yeah. UN is basically useless. Yeah, there's no point in even mentioning the UN at this point. The U.S. ignored the UN when they went in Venezuela. Everyone ignores the UN. It doesn't serve a great role right now.
That's it. They're all dead. Wow. And senior defense officials tell Fox News United.
One thing that in some videos I've watched and I absolutely believe is that the Ayatollah, he was at his residence. He was, I think they met at a bunker on this meeting of officials where they killed everyone. All those leaders up here was a bunker underneath his residence. But he himself hasn't changed the way he lives. He's lived at his residence and he's been expecting to die. He's been expecting to become a martyr this time. That is the narrative Iran is putting forth, and that I actually believe, because he could have hidden. I made a video on Iran war being imminent. I knew it. Everyone knew this was coming. If he really wanted to survive, he could have. He could have just hidden. The fact that he didn't is that I think he decided that this time I'm just going, whatever happens, happens. And he decided to become a martyr. And so it's not so much that we killed him, it's just he allowed us to kill him.
United States agrees with Israeli assessment that Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei is dead, along with 5 or 10 other top leaders in the Iranian government who are all meeting at
You see, at his compound. You see, he wasn't hiding. He hadn't gone off to some far-off bunker. He was living just in his compound, same as he always did. And he knew that the first place we bomb in a war is his compound.
So wait a minute. Are you telling me that we just waited for them all to get into one
After
building?
9/11, President Bush and high officials immediately went into the forest. He could have done the same thing. Exactly. He's the supreme leader. There's an unlimited amount of places he could have gone to hide out. I mean, there are some bunkers that are so deep and spread out that nothing can get them, except maybe a nuclear weapon, but that's not on the table. So, yeah, he could have lived if he'd wanted to, but he chose not to. And also, this is one suspicion that I have, just because of how everything's playing out. It's a little bit wild, but I feel it's that the hardline elements in Iran, like those probably that actually did want a nuclear bomb or did want to strike back more aggressively against the region, who were against negotiations. Those hardline elements, I think, took advantage of this, and I think you might have had all the, let's say, soft position, like the guy who was against Iran getting nuclear weapons, he got wiped out. I think all the other softies, let's say, in Israel got wiped out, leaving only the hardliners. I suspect that might have been orchestrated. That because I read the Chinese and the Russians, like one example where I get this thing, where I get that from. I'm going to quick side tangent.
There's a question that China's...
It may be AI, but I've been watching these videos that have this guy featured in them. I think they actually come from China. They're China's perspective is where they get their information.
Intelligence apparatus has been asking for the past 36 hours that no Western outlet has yet framed correctly. And the answer to that question is more frightening for Beijing than anything that has happened to Iran. The question is this.
It is AI, but I think this might be actually Chinese intelligence agencies making these videos, because they have very detailed information that only intelligence agency might have. And wherever they're getting the info, they've reliably been very accurate, having information ahead of other breaking stories, like about negotiations and other stuff. So they've built up some credibility with me, whoever's doing them in any case.
We gave them everything. We gave them real-time aircraft tracking data. We gave them anti-stealth radar systems. We gave them the specific flight paths of every Israeli F-35 that took off from Tel Aviv. We watched those aircraft cross Iraq in real time and transmitted their position, speed, and altitude to Iranian military commanders. The flight time from Tel Aviv to Tehran is 2.5 hours. We gave Iran 2.5 hours of warning. And Khamenei still died in his compound on a Saturday morning with 40 of his most senior commanders.
So I'm thinking this video is suggesting that Iran might be compromised, that it was spies for the West that didn't transmit the information. But I think there's another possibility. I think that hardliners in the Iran regime saw this as an opportunity to get rid of all the softliners, like the supreme leader that had been against nuclear weapons for like 50 years. If you get rid of him, this is an opportunity to do that. And everyone they don't like, gather them in one place, and they take out all the let's say the guys who want negotiations, and you have only the hardliners left. I think that's another possibility.
Next to him. So who stopped that warning from reaching him?
Who? This is suggesting someone might have been compromised, but the other possibility is it was Iranian nationalists that are fed up with going soft approach to everything, and let civilian leadership that has been trying negotiations and has been timid, let all of those get wiped out in one strike. That is another
China's
possibility.
ambassador Fu Kong called the U.S.-Israeli strikes brazen, condemning the threat of force and calling for respect for Iran's...
Because if let me put it to you this way, whoever let this happen, because Supreme Leader might have been suicidal, him dying, yes, yeah, whatever. He might have decided that. But those other 40 officials, that is someone not... They had warning. Like, I knew this attack was coming. And someone in military could have warned them not to have this gathering right at that point in time. It was suicide. But that warning wasn't given. Now, it could be it's because we had really, really, really high up Western agents in Iran. But if that was the case, there would have been regime change already. So that possibility is going down the drain. So what I think is most likely is you have the people that want to rain missiles down on Israel. Those people, the people that have been building these underground tunnels full of missiles, that half of the government decided to let the other half of the government go boom. And so now we have a really hardline regime that's stronger than ever in Iran, intent on raining missiles down across the region for the next few months. I think that is what I suspect is the point we've at. And that is pretty... Yeah, that is because it's true. All those high up leaders, all killed in one strike, that's a failure. It's either Western agents hiding something and being really clever, or it's elements of the regime letting part of the regime get destroyed. And considering how efficient they've been in shooting missiles, and that's actually what I think. I think that some parts of the military did get warnings about the strike coming, and they let it happen. That's my thing. But they let it happen not so for regime change, but so that the shackles were off in their response.
Building, and then we just blew up the building?
That's that I have no evidence for. It's just my suspicion based on how things are developing. We'll find out more as time goes on.
Yeah, exactly. So they're just sitting around. So that means that, you know what's funny is that means that we were tracking every single one of them the entire...
No, it doesn't. We bombed his compound. We bombed the compound of the Supreme Leader, and we killed lots of other leaders at the same time. So we weren't tracking everyone. We just found out, we knew where he was because he was in his house, basically, same as always. And a lot of people came to meet with him at his house, and then we bombed them then. It's not that impressive, Asmongold.
I'm wrong, yeah.
I won't go through. I think I don't need to go through more. But another thing he was in this video was he was so impressed that there were no U.S. casualties so far. But we know that's already not true. There were casualties. It's just the U.S. has been slow in admitting them. Well, I think that wraps up the coverage of Iran for today. But how did they know he was in his house and not hiding out somewhere? Well, for one thing, from all the reports I'm having, he has been staying entirely at his house, not leaving his house for months. He's always been there. He literally has been like a sitting duck on purpose because he had decided to become a martyr, or whatever happens. So if he truly wanted to survive, he would have been somewhere else. I think he really did intend to die if there was an attack by the United States. But those other 40 officials that came to meet with him, those other 40, something happened. Something, either a Western spy didn't pass on information that the Chinese and Russians were giving, or it was elements of the Iranian regime that, sick and tired with like pulling your punches, the negotiations and everything, and having these entire underground caverns filled with missiles that are never used, and they let the civilian leadership go up in smoke. That's another possibility. And because if there had been significant elements of the military that had turned traitor, we would have had regime change by now.
Sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity. He said it was shocking that the U.S. and Israeli attacks came in the middle of diplomatic negotiations.
Yeah, that's what
shocking across Iraq. And none of it saved Khamenei, because the intelligence China gave Iran reached the people who were supposed to act on it, and someone in that chain decided not to act on it.
exactly. Someone in that chain decided not to act on it. But it's not necessarily because they were compromised by the West. It could have been because the Supreme Leader is famously, he's the one with the fatwa against nuclear weapons. And at the same time, you have to understand, Iran enriched uranium up to 90%. Or was it 60%? I forget, but far beyond what they need. In other words, there are people in Iran who want nuclear weapons. And there's Ayatollah who's completely against it and has fatwa against it. So it's the people that want a nuclear weapon, let all the people that were against getting a nuclear weapon die in one strike. That's one possible way of interpreting that. Because what this video is suggesting here,
to ensure that Khamenei would still be sitting in that compound when the Israeli F-35s arrived 2.5 hours after Beijing first saw them take off.
So this video is suggesting that there are spies high up in the Iranian chain of command, but Trump wouldn't have offered a ceasefire if that was the case. So it's a different reason for all this. Anyway, out of topic, but do you support the Chinese regime? I don't like the Chinese social credit score. I don't like a lot of things about China, but they are a counterbalance to the United States. So they are, I think, useful in that sense. And I think they do overall have the interests of the Chinese people at heart. That they may not be democratic, but they have drastically improved the quality of life of the average Chinese citizen over the last, 40 years. Incredibly more. They were a third world country. Now they're nearly on par with the United States. So those results matter. And so I can't criticize them too harshly. I feel they just more honest about freedom stuff. Yes, there are elements that are not good about China. There's stuff that there's been some oppression in some places, and the handling of COVID, for example, wasn't ideal in a lot of cases. But I think overall, their intentions and heart is to make the world safer, that China more prosperous, which are good intentions. They're not going around trying to dollarize the world and creating conflicts everywhere like the United States is. So, so and unfortunately, we're in this environment where you have the U.S., it controls this worldwide global media apparatus that gives them incredible control in any democratic country. And so that's how the United States influences so much of the world, is they insist everywhere is democratic, and then they use the media to shape the outcomes in those democracies, even if it's against the interests of the people living in those democracies. So until there is a more honest worldwide media, I am lukewarm on democracy. And I don't feel, I'm not against it, but I'm not going to push for it in China as long as you have this dishonest media system, global media system. So once the U.S. deep state, whatever, comes crashing down and that's gone, then I'll be more interested in having pushing for China to be a little more democratic. Like, you can't really criticize Israel freely. You mean in China or in Israel? Probably both, actually. But there are lines you can't cross. Oh, in the media, yes. Yeah. But so I have admiration for a lot of things China has done. I love Black Myth Wukong, that game, and a lot of games that are coming out of China. I think that the government has done well by its people overall on a big scale, and that is the metric that matters most. And so far, I can't criticize it too much. But soft income is a bit lacking in China. Yes, there are a lot of problems, and it's eventually maybe I'll be more vocal about changes. But so far, as long as China is doing well overall by their people, let me put it this way. If you replace China's government with a different one, the odds of them doing better for their people overall, I don't think it's great. The GDP growth of China is pretty consistent and good, and so it's you could do worse than what's going on in China right now, but it's not perfect either. And I hate the social credit score that the West is trying to emulate. Anyway, as for the video for YouTube, that about wraps up the section for it. And come watch on Kick or Twitch, and I'll see you in the next video.